let's talk about the video that I put out on the left, and in particular, what I identified as the problem of the left. Now, I hope it's clear that in making that video, that I was not trying to claim that the left is bad. Like, some people, I think, commented before they watched it and thought that I was doing a thing where I was arguing that the left is bad, or I was like leaving the left, or one of those weird grifter things. Hey, what's up, Gil? I think I know what Gil that is. Someone I want to talk to. Let's see. And Sean, I will never be a debate bro. There's so many things that I could be before I was a debate bro. Like, I think I could be a successful Las Vegas lounge singer before I would be a debate bro. I think I could be a Michelin starred chef before I was a debate bro. I think that I could be like a high-end foot fetish sex worker for older men with disposable income before I became a debate bro. I'll do one more and then I'll stop. I think that I could be like an underwater, like one of the people that goes to the North Sea and goes underwater with like welding equipment that even works in the water to fix like pipelines and stuff. Like, I think I could be a guy that does that goes underwater in really cold water, really deep, and so deep that if you don't like pressurize, your head explodes. I could be a guy that did that before I would ever be a debate bro. So that's where I'm at as a person. Okay. And ground sounds, I agree with you. So in the video that was on the problem with the left, and thank you for those of you who watched it. I mean, what I was really thinking about is there's a lot of debate that happens online about the left. And I think it's the Gil that does What's Left of Philosophy, one of the top philosophy podcasts in the philosophy podcast universe, if I do say so myself. But you know, there's been a lot of discussion recently. There's a lot of video titles where people say like, oh, the thing with the left and the online left and this thing. And what it really feels like at a certain point is that people are talking about branding, and they are talking about a certain personal aesthetic, and often aesthetics that involved the shared consumption and reduplication of certain types of content and memes and things like that. I saw a clip from Caroline Kwan's stream yesterday that was reposted by Taylor Lorenz, and in the clip, and I don't have it pulled up, and I'm afraid that if I try to pull up clips, that I will break the fragile internet connection I have. Ground sounds, please do check out Left of Philosophy. What's Left of Philosophy? It's like truly very good. You know, one of the things I get into here, I'll get the link to that podcast before I forget. You know, one of the things I get into in the video, and I still, Gil, want to talk to you about this because I still have time to work stuff into the video. So let me DM you, or you DM me later and we'll figure it out. But is this balance of people who, you know, use philosophy to make content in, I guess, more earnest and less earnest ways. And I think sometimes there's a weird thing where often people who are really good at making content aren't the best at doing philosophy. I think other times people that are really good at doing philosophy are bad at making content. I think that podcast is a good example of you know, of find you a man that can do both. But back to the leftism video. And the Caroline Kwan thing I was mentioning. So Caroline Kwan, there's a clip where she was ranting, which is fine. Ranting is good. That wasn't a critique, about how there's a lot of specifically online young men who wait for figures like Hassan Piker or others to dictate to them what their politics will be. Now, someone like Hassan has hundreds of thousands of people in their audience. And I know that, I mean, I like watching Hassan. I know many of you do. And I know for us, it's not a matter of like, the master has given me my commands, you know, but there are people for whom politics is about participation in a certain brand, in a certain community. And at the level of individuals, and we'll get to the individual systems distinction more in a second, at the level of the individual, I have empathy for that, even the empathy for the desire to participate in a community or something like that. Gil, maybe we should do that. Let's see if this keeps working, and I'll ping you in a second. Maybe that would be a great thing there. Also, I see someone said sex worker joke, classic. I hope you didn't think I was making fun of sex workers any more than I was making fun of Michelin star chefs or underwater welders. I think those are all real jobs, but I think they're jobs that are pretty far from what I do. But all that to say, and I see in the chat, Ground Sound says he appeals to our inner debate, bro, that everyone has inside them to some extent. I imagine you're talking about Hassan there. But yeah, I think that's true. Like, there's something nice about watching someone who you agree with win. You know, the same reason why watching a sports team you like win feels good. I do think there's a problem, and we can talk about this, about doing politics like sports. You know, there's a thing I cut from the video where I was talking about being a Chicago Cubs fan. And I know many of you hate that about me, and you're right, and I accept it. But in my fandom for the Chicago Cubs, I listen to Cubs podcast sometimes. I will participate in Cubs Twitter and other, social media fandom, things like that. In doing all of those things, I am not a baseball player, right? I'm just participating and supporting a privately owned company, a company that's owned by really bad people that plays a sport. So I'm not doing baseball if I post about the Cubs or consume content about the Cubs. I'm just consuming content about a baseball team. And I think what happens sometimes with our politics in the sort of online left thing, and if I'm honest, and this is something I don't really want to like say in a video because people get mad if I can't be subtle enough, but like I don't think that I struggle. I don't know if I think the online left is a real thing in the way that people think it's a real thing. But like when we post about politics and consume content about politics, when we hang out on streams with people that have similar values to us, when we read blogs and watch videos, it can let us feel like we are doing something. It can let us feel like we are participating in political movements. And I think that is the mistake, right? And this is, I think this is what maybe some in the Lacanian Žižekian world would think of as surplus enjoyment. Surplus enjoyment being this idea that like I get enjoyment not from doing a thing, but from thinking about doing a thing or consuming content about a thing. Whoa, Michael Kennedy, that's very interesting. I'm going to go back to the chat because a lot of you guys are saying super interesting stuff. But, in my video that's coming out on Kierkegaard's book, The Present Age, which relates to a lot of this, I give an example in the book, in that video. Also, stay around to the end of that video if you want to see me play guitar for a second. But I give an example in that of a thing that's happened in my life. And I think I mentioned this before. I sometimes will spend hours consuming videos of consuming videos about the guitar, lessons where people teach you things about the guitar, gear videos about guitar, all this sort of stuff. And I'll do that for, let's say, 10 hours in a week sometimes, but I won't even play guitar for 10 hours, right? So it's this idea that I'm getting the psychic satisfaction of participating in a creative hobby while I'm just consuming things about that thing. Yeah, I see Eddie saying that in the chat right now as well. Relatable stuff. And there's no real comparison of the joy and the humanity that come from playing music, especially playing music with people versus doing it alone. Not so Oedipus. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll make a video and put it on Patreon or something, just explaining my dissertation for the people who would be into something like that. So all I have to say is, I think that sometimes we are not thinking enough about the conditions of contemporary content consumption, distribution, all that sort of stuff when we're in the midst of it. And in the same way that I can feel like I'm getting better as a musician from watching videos about other people playing music, I might feel like I am contributing to some sort of left-wing political progress in the act of consuming things. Now, some people might be thinking this, and I get into this video, I'm kind of, expanding on some of the stuff there for the real heads with the consumption of political content. One might say like, but in some of it, isn't it political education? And yes. So in the video, I'm sure most of you watched it. I kind of say that like, if we're going to talk about the left, let's at least start from these two things. Let's start from thinking about that there is a historical thing called the left. And I don't do the most stunning historical analysis of this ever in the video. I kind of use the French Revolution as a loose starting point. But Gil, I'll see you in a bit, and I might ping you if the stream seems to hold up about jumping on. If not, let's do it soon. But we have to remember that there are existing political organizations and movements that trace back to a certain revolutionary history that are participating in something called the left. And they're not perfect, right? Like, so to speak on my own life a little bit, I'm a member of DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America. I don't really actively participate that much of these days. I previously participated a little more actively. I was in a caucus at one point that I'm no longer in. But, there are organizations that exist that will let you embody or participate in some sort of leftist history or whatever. So I think like that's an important side of it. The other side of it is that there is a history of leftist thinking. Now I say leftist philosophy. Of course, we could call it political philosophy, political thought, political theory, social theory, whatever it might be. But there is a history of people who have used left-wing thought or have used the tools of philosophy and theory to think about the project of the left to make that project more rigorous and more coherent and that sort of thing. So I think what can happen sometimes is we think that we are doing one of those things, either A, participating in an active political organization, or B, we think that we're learning theory or something when we're just doing like online political content. Now, it is fine to do that. It's just like we got to know what we're doing when we do it. And this is where I get a little more old and cranky, because I do think, I see someone in the chat bringing up mutual aid projects. I think that stuff is awesome. So there you go. I think that like that's maybe one of the easiest ways to get involved with something that feels like leftist organizing. And I don't know, I have a lot of empathy for the fact that for many of us, we have to work a lot just to stay afloat, and that there's not always a ton of time to maybe do the like political organizing work we would want to. And I think that's okay. And I think it's just figuring out where you can get in and get involved. But yeah, so those are some of the main ideas I get at there. But then here's the thing that I don't get into as much in the video, which is maybe the question of like, what does it mean to be a leftist? What are the ideas that provide coherence for folks that think they are or self-identify as a leftist? And I do think egalitarianism is a pretty big one. It's something I think about, egalitarianism or equality, as one of those foundational principles of being leftist. Another one, this is obvious, but anti-capitalist. I think that having a theory of capitalism or being able to articulate why one is against capitalism is important. And I think not just pointing at capitalism and saying capitalism bad, but also saying like, this is how capitalism works and this is how we see it functioning. And I think that is important. I think it's important that we see the thing, shout out to They Live, but it's like, we gotta be able to put our glasses on and see things in that sense. People in the chat, abolish private property, seize the means of production. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff we can get at in terms of outlining what it means to be leftist. And, in that video, I get into the work of Anna Kornbluh, who's been on this show. Some of you probably saw that interview. I really can't recommend her book, Immediacy, enough. And, the basic idea, and I'll explain this a little bit more because I say it kind of quickly in the video, is that we are often unknowingly participating in a form of like content consumption or digital thought that would qualify as immediacy. What does it mean to experience something in an immediate sense? It's the idea that that in the contemporary situation, media and ideas and political events hit us in this immediate way. The thing is happening. I see the thing. I experience the thing. I think about the experience of going to a music venue like the Sphere in Vegas, and you're just inside of a thing, and there's no space between you and being overwhelmed by sound and lights and graphics and all this sort of stuff. The way in which when we scroll through social media, think about what it feels like. Think about what it feels like to be on social media. It's like you're scrolling and you're waiting for one or two types of emotional reactions. Like you're waiting to either be like, ooh, I love that, and that affirms the thing that I am a part of, or you're ready to be like, ooh, that's bad, and I don't like that. This happens to me. There's times where I a certain part of my brain could scroll through Twitter or Blue Sky and just spend all day either reposting. I'm not so Oedipus. That's so kind of you to say, by the way. So thank you for even trying. S.E. Johnson. I think S.E. Johnson and company. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I know some people who had problems with the media analysis in that book. It's kind of the stuff that I worried less about. But yeah. But so we have that experience of immediacy. And the way this applies to our online politics and politics in general is that we react to things in a visceral, immediate way as I'm on the left and this isn't the left, or my team is for this against that. And I saw it before. Sean in the chat brought up protesting, and we might think that something like going to a protest is outside of the critique of immediacy because it involves maybe seeing that a protest is happening, stepping away, making the decision to, take the bus downtown to meet up with some people you don't know to go to a protest where cops might be smacking folks around or something like that. But even in doing so, and Kornbluh gets at this in the Jacobin interview that I referenced in that video, often people just want to immediately participate in the thing without further thought or structure. And something that she says, and I saw some people in the comments who I think are anarchists that didn't like this, but she kind of implies that there's a contemporary tendency towards horizontalism, and a lack of desire for structure, whether that's the union, the party, or existing organizations. And I think that that's part of what happens with protest stuff. And I think a thing we might not want to say out loud, I'll say it. I'll be sloppy right now. I mean, I'm both an incredibly hopeful person and also very cynical. And there's times in which, looking at contemporary protest movements, I kind of feel like, what is the point? Now, and I think, again, it was Sean in the chat who brought up some examples here. Like, if you can put your body on the line to protect more vulnerable people than yourself, if you are, physically resisting forces of fascism, if and I think too, there's something about going to an in-person protest that can build a type of political enthusiasm that is great. But if it doesn't build to anything else, if it's always just an individualist act, then what are we doing? And I'm old enough to have participated in various protest actions and movements. And the sad thing is the left, whatever that means, in America hasn't gotten that much more powerful. I see someone bringing up Occupy in the chat. And that's the thing. I think Occupy really represents this. And I do think, looking back at Occupy, a lot of very earnest and good people were involved in it, but it was goofy. And it was goofy because rather than participating in or embracing existing leftist philosophies and organizational structures, these, and a lot of people that led Occupy were like marketing bros in New York City and like Gen Xers. They had to invent their way of doing it. You know, they had to come up with their own methodology. For anyone just getting here, talking a little bit about ideas adjacent to the video that I put out last week or over the weekend on the problem with the left. Just a hot take title meant to piss people off. And another part of this culture then, and I'll bounce around here a little bit, is of course the way in which we are quick to kind of say like, who is the left, who isn't the left, who's on the left, who's not on the left, things of that nature. And of course that happened. And one of the motivations, or not even motivations, inspirations for the video was the reaction to Natalie of ContraPoints' statement about Gaza. Someone left a comment that said I did a contradiction, which first of all, of course, I'm always going to do contradictions because I'm just a guy. You know, said that it was contradictory of me to sort of criticize Natalie's statement on Gaza and then end with a sort of plea to take Michael Brooks' idea seriously, to be kind to individuals and ruthless and critical towards systems. But, you know, I think that a lot of time gets spent doing this thing of like, this person isn't really the left, or this person is the left, or whatever it might be. And I just don't think that's the most important. I think it also reduplicates an incredibly individualist logic, a very moralizing logic, and at times, a cop logic, you know, a snitch logic. Like when people who are on the left make like YouTube videos where they're like, here's why so-and-so is an idiot. Here's why so-and-so is a bad leftist. And like, I have been adjacent to that sort of content in general. The videos that I have made about people, I try to talk about like real bad guys, you know, like a Jordan Peterson or James Lindsay type. But like in doing that, what are you doing other than attacking an individual for the sake of lifting up your own brand or showing that you're somehow smarter, more pure, more good, more better than the other guys? And what about that is embodying a political principle that is largely grounded in an idea that freedom is a collective project, not an individual project, that, you know, our primary critical energy should be of systems, not of people. And sometimes, like when we talk about people, we're talking about people that represent certain systems. We might critique a person. You know, it's like if we talk about like Elon Musk or something like that, we're not saying Elon Musk, that if we take down Elon Musk, we'll take down capitalism. But we can use Elon Musk or something like that. I'm thinking about this because I was watching Ian's video over on Epoch Philosophy. We'll talk to him soon about that. Alina in the chat said ContraPoints is an artist, not leftist. No, I think that's true. I think there's a lot of people, and someone said she's liberal. Again, like, I think that's fair. And that's why I think a lot of people who were really mad are kind of just like, I don't know, is this someone who's like a part of the leftist organizing stuff? Shiloh says, and this is how I know someone used to be an evangelical. Shout out to you. Is this like separating the sin from the sinner? To an extent, yes. But so in the video, I eventually get to a Michael Brooks quote. Michael Brooks, rest in peace, one of, I don't know, just a great human that did online leftism in a way that I think was cool and good, and also did in-person leftism. But, you know, said something to the effect of, you know, be kind individuals, ruthless towards systems. And I guess what I'm saying here, you know, I don't think the use of Michael Brooks is to be like, kumbaya, let's be nice to everyone, we can't critique people. But my thing would be to ask ourselves why we are so drawn to people. Why are we so quick to vilify humans? Why do we get so mad at individual people for people that create online content? Why are you so quick to want to do a ruthless takedown of a person over and against focusing on systems? So Sean said, Mike from PA, shouts to Mike. I want to get him on the show soon. Says you need to be ruthless to certain individuals, hold up systems. But yeah, and I think that that's the thing again, like if you're going to be ruthless towards people, they shouldn't be people that don't have power. You know what I mean? Like, what is the point of going incredibly hard on those who don't have power? I think sometimes there is, and it's the same thing I just talked about with like Elon Musk, right? You don't end horrific techno-feudalism by taking down Elon Musk, right? There is a system at play that is going to exist whether he is alive or not alive. But he is someone who is actively perpetuating that system, and I think could be ruthlessly critiqued as a part of the perpetuation of that. I think that someone who like passively has some bad ideas on liberalism, or someone who like has a small, and I see YouTube watchers saying having an audience is a kind of power for sure. And I do, and again, I think there are content creators that can be criticized. I think the content creators that should be criticized are maybe the ones that A, have really massive audiences, B, are making ass tons of money off those audiences, and C, are presenting themselves as a type of, I don't know if leader is the right word, but there are people who make shit where they're just like, this is right, this is the thing. And I don't know. I think that people do that. So, and again, what happens is a reduplication of the individual market logic of neoliberalism. You know, something I'm talking about in this video I'm making on YouTube and philosophy is how, you know, and I'll just give away the big contradiction at the heart of that video, is that how do you, if you are a progressive leftist person wanting to use philosophy, how do you do that earnestly on a platform that is run completely on the logic of data acquisition, attention grabbing, selling advertising, making you addicted to the screen? Like, how do we navigate the contradiction between those things? That's kind of the point of that video. And one of the things I talk about is there's a certain type of like content creation, even that's like, why so-and-so's a fucking idiot. Why so-and-so got owned. So-and-so gets wrecked. I have participated in this, just to be clear. I know that world because I've been in that world. But like when we do that, the logic being employed there is the logic of the ruthless system, is the logic of digital capitalism, is the logic of YouTube. YouTube promotes like anger, reaction, rage clicking, all that sort of stuff. Those are mechanisms used to capture the attention of individuals to further the power of a platform and make money for other people. So if you're going to use those precise things when you're making your leftist or progressive work, you're just doing the thing, you know? And now one might say like, yeah, I mean, I see someone saying YouTube. No, YouTube's not a left-wing platform at all. I don't think there's any platform. Well, I mean, there's platforms that are run by people. This is okay. There's platforms that are owned by people that are like left wing or progressive, but the platforms themselves still participate in a certain thing. You know what I mean? And I guess those critiques matter in a world where content is tied to that. Someone said, so is he saying people shouldn't do takedowns of that Connor guy, the Jubilee fascist? No, man, fuck fascist. No, I just think in a sense, like, does the psychic satisfaction we get through taking down a person trick us into thinking that we are having a larger structural impact? Because friends, we are not. And we must remember that a lot of the anger and rage and vengefulness we have is indicative of like an Ayn Randian type of fucking neoliberal, individualist, objectivist culture. And sometimes people, I think, will go out of their way to justify being dicks, or will justify being really ruthless towards people without a good reason. For me, of course, and I talked about this in the Jameson reading group in the first session, but I do think that's why there is a sort of philosophic value to empathy, or a political value to empathy, that I think sometimes maybe isn't is cool. Michael Kennedy said it's a way to scapegoat the structural fight. Yeah. Let's see. But yeah, in general, like with the fascism, I'm kind of talking. Yeah, my discussion is more focused on, or what I'm interested is a little more focused on that. But yeah, so again, this is all just kind of notes and footnotes on that video. And in making that video as well, I was not trying to claim, or I hope it doesn't come across as me saying that I am a good leftist or the good leftist or anything of that nature. I'm just a guy. I'm just a guy. But the things that I am confident in are that if we do have a desire to participate in physically and socially existing left-wing projects, that we need to be self-critical about the way our usage of the internet does feel in those. And along with that self-criticism of our internet activity, I think the two poles we can kind of think about are, if I'm doing a thing and I think the thing is like a form of leftism, is it A, aiming at, participating in, overlapping with, contributing to an actually existing or organized group, or B, is it something that, is helping me gain a better intellectual understanding of certain principles?